The Gold Coast Suns, Damien Hardwick famously said on his first press conference that 80% of the premiership side that he was going to coach at Gold Coast was in the room. Daniel Rioli and John Noble, specifically Rioli this weekend, is an addition, Geordie, and he has just taken this Suns team by storm.
Oh, I mean, you played with him, played in three flags with you. So he's not only are you getting experience, you're getting a player that the club needed. And, you know, he, over the off-season, would have schooled up everyone around him, including Noble, who had come from a really strong, transition/defensive side. But he's been a brilliant pickup. He's a quality player. There's a reason why Damien Hardwick went after. I mean, the match this week with the two Queensland sides
yeah, it's great.
would be the biggest match that these two have played.
How big is it, Brownie? You're up there. These two sides have never been at the top of the ladder like this because of the Suns' the inability to play finals. What's it going to mean? What are you seeing and forecasting in the Q Clash this weekend?
Yeah, it's interesting because a few of my rugby league mates might throw their stubby at the TV on this comment, but there'll be more coverage in the papers, especially on the Gold Coast, about AFL than there will be the NRL this week. Yeah, it's huge. It's the biggest one, apart from that first one, but this is meaningful in terms of how the two teams are going. But look, this is a step up in class for Gold Coast. You actually look at their draw difficulty. They've had a soft run, haven't they? They've had the easiest draw all season out of all the teams. So this is a step up. They're going into the city for a run. They've been running in the country the last few weeks, Jack.
Here is the draw difficulty, Brownie.
Absolutely.
Look at them sitting number one at the moment, Gold Coast. And
Brisbane are fourth.
Number one, the easiest.
Yeah, exactly. Brisbane are fourth, but Brisbane won a premiership last year. So we're talking the context of the Gold Coast Suns. Yes, we're getting excited about the Suns, and they're absolutely on the right track. But hey, go and play against the big boys and see how you go.
That's about the only rider that we'd put on the premiership window in the early stages of the season.
It's a caveat.
Because, you don't know about the difficulty of the draw. So it just gets better and better.
No, it's foolproof. Our premiership window is foolproof.
Oh, boys.
18 out
Splitting at the seams.
Pipe hasn't been smoked 19 out of the last 20 years.
18 out of 20 times it works every time.
Very good. All right, well, I want to chat Jason.
I'll give you smoke rings in a few weeks' time. Don't worry about that, mate.
Very good. Someone who may have been seeing smoke rings on the weekend, or maybe I reckon they were seeing red, was Jason Horne-Francis. And a lot's been made of the Port superstar, and especially, this action here from Jai Simpkin, his former teammate at his old football club, North Melbourne. The Horne-Francis saga, it's blown up, Brownie. What are you seeing?
Of course it's blown up. I used to hate that blokes hitting you in the back. They'd run up behind you and hit you in the back. I want to dot Simpkin on the chin.
Justified?
Well, he has. He's got stuck into him. So that's a competitor coming out. He's a young player who gets frustrated and he's lost his temper. But I tell you what, that just wasn't out of nothing. That's one of the most frustrating things that used to happen. It used to happen a lot to forwards, that action out there. So, yes, I know that he had a bit of an argument with the coaches and with the players and all that sort of stuff. But, geez, I reckon we've blown it up far too much because it didn't affect his performance.
I look around the couches and I think we're all actually probably a little bit of a hothead early on. So, Bucks, I'm going to ask you. You're the biggest of the hotheads here.
Well,
how do you deal with that as a younger player?
Is he third year or fourth year? Well, I reckon I was still doing that 7 or 8 years ago. But he was quite clearly targeted. And what he's done, his reaction has ensured that that's going to happen for another 4 or 5 years yet until he handles it better.
Well, but
it's going to keep
he's
coming.
Playing good footy though.
Well, I understand that, but as we would all know, you've got to be your football's one thing, but your contribution to the team is most important. And if it's a detriment to take time and energy away, then that's something that needs to be checked. And I think you can't have that conversation with the person, and we've all been there, in the moment. In the moment, you get the red mist, and it's really hard for anything to soothe you or to settle you down. But there'll be further conversations through the week that I'm sure that Jason Horne-Francis and the respect that he has for his leaders, Ken Hinkley and the on-field leaders, that'll
I'd much rather having to polish someone up. Because if it's not in you, it's not in you. Yeah, he's clearly got a competitive.
Exactly what Butters said after the game.
That's exactly right. And I love what Butters did too. That's leadership, isn't it? So, Kenny, you don't want to see the coach have to be the one that manhandles the player.
If they'd
the
lost
teammate
the game,
can, absolutely.
If they'd lost the game, we'd have a very different.
Would be very different.
Well, then you'd probably got something to go on. Because, okay, well, we would have jumped on that and said, how significant was that in the loss? But they ended up doing what they needed to do.
He'll get there.
The one thing that I didn't like is when Ken, Rosie and Butters pulled him in like a little school kid. I think you can have those conversations, understanding that people are watching. understanding that what people would think of that particular instance. I would rather see Rosie grab him by himself, Zach Butters grab him by himself, or even Ken Hinkley grab him by himself and have a conversation. I just think the optics of that said to me they treated him like a school kid.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's a really.
But they might have. You don't know behind closed scenes.
Unless he's given permission.
Yeah.
Unless he's given permission for that to happen on field, I didn't think that was.
They had a game to win. There was still 30 minutes of footy. They had a game to win. They needed to have him up and
I just think it could be done by one person.
I just coach action. That's all you can coach, right? So we know the actions need to be delivered. Keep doing or modify. So quarter time was to modify the action and get doing this.
Put the pedal to the metal.
How do you improve it after an old bloke comes down and says, how about you focus on this, and this, and then the tidy's up pretty quick, which tells you mentally they weren't tuned into the conditions and the opponent like they needed to be.
I'm on fire.
We've got a lot of work to do, but we know where we're headed. We're not deviating. Don't feel sorry for him, just kick the goal.
Yes, welcome back to On the Couch. We love the access to coaches, and sometimes the access for Ross Lyon post a loss is better than post a win, because we do get a lot of great content.
That's
from it. You can see the quarter time there. I don't think I've seen Ross go that shade of purple before, Geordie. What did you make of Ross Lyon's performance on the weekend, quarter time and post game?
I think we need to accept there should be more of it, and I get that the kids need to be coached a little bit differently. So you're probably asking them wrong, because I liked personally to be coached like that, and as he said, it got to the point where you just start rolling your eyes and something has to change. You can't let the game slip away. So he knows the group, he understands the group, he understands his strength as a coach, and I think that's his strength, to be able to motivate people.
In particular, it was cough-ups that I think that really set Ross off on the weekend, and that was St Kilda were able to get the ball, but you can see here, just coughing the ball up left, right and centre bucks.
He referenced this in the post-match press conference about first possessions to clearance. And the first possessions were relatively even, but the clearances were heavily in favour of the Lions. And then that fed out into probably contests around the ground, which fed into inside 50s, 24-6 in that first quarter. And that was what the the purple head was all about. He was red.
What do you expect to do? Sit back and
no, I love it
and laugh at that. And it just wasn't at AFL standard. So I understand why he did it. I don't know why the outcry has been to take off a younger player.
Well, you would think that Ross would know how to extract the best out of his players in a trying situation. I mean, inside 50s, like they had 6 inside 50s in the first half.
The sub move was a good move. Like in the second quarter, Zach Jones actually came on and gave him something. So Garcia, he might be a young up-and-coming player, but you've got to make hard decisions. So he was trying something because they were getting absolutely smashed. We saw those cough-ups. The territory was just diabolical. So you can't do that against the Premiership.
And it's all right for a coach, as you said, it's all right for a coach to be frustrated if you don't follow through on what you've said you're going to follow through with. We saw it with Adelaide, knew that Fremantle were going to bring the heat, but they couldn't cope with it. And Nick said we weren't ready for what we knew was coming. I think if you ask Ross, and he said it, they weren't ready for what they knew was coming, and Face was talking about the fact they needed to ramp up their pressure and their team D, but it just didn't happen. So the coach is allowed to say, hey, boys, and I love that line, you can't coach feelings, you coach actions, and their actions weren't good enough, so coach that.
You spoke about they knew what was coming. The thing that was coming was the 2024 Premier's Brownie after a 52-point loss last week to the table-topping Collingwood Football Club. They got their defence back.
Absolutely, they did. And like Buck said, Chris Fagan spoke about it during the week.
Team defence has been a huge focus this week. I just feel like that's dropped away. And it's the first thing that drops away when either attitude or energy is not right. So I've seen a trend, so we've talked about that this week.
Definitely talked about it. They were stifled. This is all from the first quarter. They could not move the ball. This is a big part of the reason it was 24-6 inside 50. They couldn't get it past halfway mark, hardly, St Kilda. So they were locked in. Obviously, the spacing there between the Lions players was outstanding, Jack.
A lot of teams call this the bubble, so you can sort of wrap a bubble around these players here as you highlight them. Just the shifting in unison, Brownie. This is the DNA of a really good defence and a side that was picked apart last week.
But what we do see early every year is a couple of teams that want to go man to man and think that they can defend man to man. Eventually, they end up dropping into a more efficient, more sustainable method of defence, which is the bubble or the zone or the Collingwood clamp, whatever you want to call it. But this is what the Lions were able to execute really well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Individuals stood up. So senior players, like midfield numbers, the previous week against Collingwood, 28 tackles as a team. Yeah, look at McCluggage had 1, McInerney 4, Dunkley had 1, Neil had 2 and Bailey had none. This week, those players, 11, 9, 4, 5 and 6 with their tackles. So the pressure was right up. Look at that. It was impossible to score against in the first half. They had a discussion, and I'm pretty sure it was a strong discussion behind closed doors. Chris Fagan, he sticks up for his boys, but when it comes time to give him a clip, he'll give him a clip and a sharpen up, and they came out with a real sharp edge about him on the weekend.